Hey everybody, my name is Nick Ravel and I play viola, and I created DragonScales. It's my 3-octave scale and arpeggio audio play-along system in all keys for violin, viola, and cello. It's out on the web, and recently Southwest Strings added it to their inventory, which I'm super excited about. I'll leave a link in the description telling you how to get it. Today is the third and last video of our mini-series Smart Practice, where we first covered setting goals in the practice room, and then covered creating methods to accomplish those goals. Today's video, we'll talk about how to tell, using our awareness, if our methods are actually accomplishing our goals, and what to do if they're not. So if that sounds interesting to you, like, subscribe, and let's jump right in. I want to first start by thanking you, the viewers, for giving me these ideas and encouraging me to make this content. Without you in mind, I honestly don't think I would have made it. And maybe you can relate to this, but I've always had a general sense about how to practice. Forcing myself to create these very specific ways in which the practice flows has actually really helped me. I'm really following this smart practice system, and I gotta say it's really, really helpful. So let's sum up real quick what this whole thing is about. I see it now as a flow chart, nothing more. It helps me get unstuck in the practice room, and it helps me structure my practice when I'm not really feeling that motivated or creative. The goals, setting goals. It's kind of lofty words, but really all you're doing is asking yourself, what do I want to do? What do I want to sound like? How do I want to feel when I play this? Those are your goals. Brilliant starting place. Because from there you can then decide, how do I want to attack those goals? How do I want to accomplish them? That's the method. The method is where you can get real creative with your practice session and come up with the craziest and zaniest ways of playing your instrument, eliminating variables, creating too many variables, basically experimenting on yourself in order to accomplish your goals. I see the first phase, the goal setting, as a very reflective part. There's not actually much doing. You just have to think about what you want. The method is the actual practice. It's the actual doing. It's the playing of your instrument, or the approaching of your instrument, or the deciding not to play your instrument. Those are your methods. That's a very active process. The third part brings us to today's video, is sort of using our awareness to determine if our methods are actually accomplishing our goals. This is another reflective part of the process. And because of that, I think it's a step that most of us will frequently miss. It's hard to get on a roll with the practicing part and then have to stop and ask yourself, is it working? It can be a real flow killer. But I think it's important for several reasons. As I talked about in the last video, repetition is a dangerous game we play. It is often required. Our bodies cannot take in all of the information at once, therefore we need to do something multiple times in order to really absorb everything it's giving us. But at the same time, we can get stuck in a loop. And if we don't ever reach that third part of the practice process, the flow chart, asking, is this working? Is this doing anything? Then we might just keep going until we're tired. And we've just spent our whole practice doing one thing that had questionable results. So, is it helping? What do you need in order to be able to do this? You need to be able to listen to your actual sound that you're making. You need to be able to compare that to the sound you were making before you started trying to accomplish your goal with the method. And if you can't do both of those things at the same time, then you need to record yourself so that you have a more objective perspective on your playing, on your sound. So you basically need to have the memory in order to remember how it was before you started working, and the awareness to know how it is now. Without being able to compare those two things, you don't know if you're getting better or not. So interestingly enough, that could become part of your practice process, is making that your goal. I want to be able to remember how it was 5 minutes ago and compare it to how it is now. So that's a bit of a tricky thing with this practice process. It's a flowchart. It's helpful to structure our practice, but as I said in previous videos, it's messy. It's going to lead to more questions and possibly problems than answers, which is good if you think about it, because that means you'll never be stuck. It's an infinite information generator. Pretty cool. So if you find yourself coming up against this wall where you're starting to generate more goals than you can accomplish, meaning the goals are coming in quicker than you can accomplish them, can solve them, that's okay. That means you're doing it right. You're using the practice process to help you identify what you want to get better at. If it becomes overwhelming to have to remember all of them, write them down. Make a list. And not just a list for that day, make it a lifetime list. And you can always refer back to those really important goals, especially when you're feeling stuck or unmotivated or not creative. Here's some ways to tell if what you're doing is potentially not helping to solve your immediate goal. The previous example of it's generating a lot more goals, a lot more ideas, and you're getting maybe distracted. That's one sign that your method is not actually helping to solve your goal. You need to do some reorganization work in your head about your concept about practicing if you're generating tons and tons of goals. As I said, you can write those down. Similarly, if what you're doing, the method, is actually revealing a problem in a different area. For example, if I'm working on a passage for intonation, and my goal is I want to be able to hear the interval between the third note and the fourth note in the passage. But as I get there, every time I do it, my mind goes to a physical feeling in my left hand. And that distraction is making it impossible for me to remember or for me to just hear the interval that I'm trying to get to. That's a moment where the practice process is telling me that my method is probably good. It's probably good for accomplishing the goal, which in this case was to hear the interval between the third and fourth note in the passage. But that a new problem, a new goal, has sort of usurped that first goal. Meaning it's become more important. I can't focus on my current goal because this other goal is screaming at me. At that point, it might be a good idea to shift and say, I'm going to come back to this intonation thing after I address this new goal that seems very important. So my new goal now is not the intonation anymore. I don't care about that. I mean, I do, but for the moment, I don't care about that. I'm caring about how do I get from that third to the fourth note in my left hand. There's something in there that's not comfortable and it's distracting me from the sound. So then I come up with methods. Okay, let me focus on my balance, my breathing. Can I feel my arm-hand finger connection at all times when I do that? Now let's say that I come into some, insight, I have some clues as to what's going on, come up with those methods to sort of help figure that out. And I want to then go back to the intonation. Well, it might be good just to check in with the full practice process of, is this helping? In a way, having this new goal come up and become more important than the first goal is sort of nested within your first goal of wanting to hear the intonation from the third to the fourth note in that passage. Once you kind of get used to that new goal, you kind of solve it to an extent, then maybe your attention is now alleviated to sort of think about that third to fourth note in terms of intonation. And you can go back to your first goal. So it's dynamic. And this is where it gets messy. You can't just stay on the same track. I think if you do, you are maybe shutting out too much information in the process. So then a third question comes up. The first question is it helping? The second question is, what if it's not helping? The third question is, how much better do you want to get? A lot of these goals that you're going to come up with, we talk in terms of accomplishing them or not, but really there's no theoretical limit to how connected you can be to those concepts or results. And I think it's really important for you to, as you go, start making decisions about how good do I need to be? There is going to be a law of diminishing returns, where the first 10 minutes of practice you spend on a single goal, you're probably going to see big results, especially if you're using methods that accomplish those goals. Maybe after those 10 minutes, you're still working just as hard, but everything is getting more and more refined, everything is getting more subtle, and it's going to require more time to make similar gains. It's probably going to require a lot more time to make even less gains, actually, than the first 10 minutes. So it's not that working on it is bad, and as the nature of fine crafts, you will have to sink in time to get to an advanced level, advance from where you are. That's just the nature of it. The question is, how much time? And nobody can answer that except for you. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, remember back to our first part, you'll probably be generating all of these goals as you go. And while it's important to stay focused and shut out unnecessary information as you go, it's also important to be smart about how you divvy up your time. So the goals that come up might be just as valid and sort of valuable as the one you're focusing on. So if you sink your entire practice into that one goal, you may be missing out on gains from other goals that you could just also spend 10 minutes on. So I get into this a lot where, yes, I'm practicing goals that relate to my playing and the music that I'm working on. But zooming out, there's sort of this meta practice process where as you're going, it's good to keep like 10% of your awareness on the actual practice process, not only in the moment or for the duration of the practice process, but for a longer period of time, days in a row, a few weeks. I think any more than that, it's actually really difficult to be objective about that. What do I mean by all this? Meaning, you're starting on a new piece. The piece is more difficult than any other piece you've played, sort of the classic scenario, right? It's good to sort of make an estimate about how long this piece is going to take to accomplish sort of the basic goals of like, I want to learn all the notes in all the right places and express something while I do it. If you're super duper focused on just those goals in your practice session, you might not be aware that there are all these other goals coming up in your head, all on the side, and you're sifting through them, and you're going through them as you can. The meta bit comes from zooming out and seeing how you are engaging with the process, which in turn might become its own goal. You might say, I want to experiment not with the music, yes, with the music, but in this case, with the actual practice process. How you're going about structuring your practice. You might do something different every day. Today, you're going to spend a full half hour on just that one goal, even if it's completely solved after 10 minutes. If you're open to other goals popping up, then that's not a problem. Maybe the next day you're going to say, I'm going to put a cap of 10 minutes on each goal that I come up with, no matter what state those goals are in by the end of those 10 minutes. And again, just to remind you, for all of these processes, you're going to have to, in some way, compare how was it before and how is it now. That's just something you're going to have to do if you want to know if you're getting better or not. Couple strategies in terms of the practice process. These are mostly opinions, but there's definitely some truth. Cramming never works. Your brain is less efficient as it works on the same thing over and over again. That's why we keep talking about how repetition is dangerous. But repetition over a number of days is actually very useful. Again, 10 minutes on a goal, but for 5 or 6 days in a row, that's major gains on that goal. And then there's time for other goals in your hour-long practice or 2 hours, however much time you have in your practice. Setbacks are also really important to know about. The first being that over time, your body is going to change. If you really think about it, the body is how we make our sound. We have to hold the bow. I'm talking about violin, viola, and cello, right? We hold the bow, we put the bow to the string, and we draw it, and it makes sound because it makes the friction activate the slip and grip principle on the string, and the string starts vibrating at the pitch of the string, and then that's how we hear. But if our bodies change, then that means it's going to change how we play, and that means the sound is going to change, and that changes potentially our goals. So if you're a kind of person that remembers very clearly what it was like, but like a long time, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you're comparing that to now, it might just be your body's different. You have to adapt to playing with your new body. Same thing with the mind. The mind is going to change over time, and that means that your tastes are going to change over time. Your strategies for attacking the practice process are going to be changing over time as well. You're also going to have bad days. That's just a reality. Unfortunately, I hate those days. I sometimes just find it easier to put the viola away after a short practice and not let myself get too down about that day. Maybe you're the kind of person that wants to fight through that bad day and see if you can just grab what you can. That's fine. But just know that that bad day is coming and it's inevitable. So it's not your fault, right? It's good to be prepared for the inevitability of that day, and it's good to have a couple options ready to go for yourself. The opposite is also true. You're going to have a really good day. Everything is going to feel like magic. The sound is going to be crystal clear, warm. It's going to be brilliant. But if you're anything like me, that can mean that your standard has just gone up a few notches unfairly for your tomorrow's self. Because tomorrow might not be a good day. It might be a normal day, or it might be a bad day, in which case you're going to feel like you're falling. And so it's good to just keep in mind, like, over time, how am I doing? As part of this awareness, as part of this, the meta thing that I was talking about, zooming out a little bit. Don't let that one bad day make you think you suck, and don't let that one good day make you think you're about to play concerto with your favorite orchestra. It's good to keep it all in perspective. So to sum up, this video got a little heady, but I think we can just take a second to bring it all together. Really, practicing is creative, it's interactive, and there's no straight path to success. It's all very messy. This Smart Practice series is an attempt at giving us some structure in our practice. It's a way of generating the things that we want to do with our sound and how we want to feel when we play. It's a way of generating the methods for which we accomplish those things. And then this is sort of taking a stab at, how do we know if any of that's working? Are we wasting our time? So I hope that this mini practice series has helped you in your practice. It's definitely helped me. Specifically, the goals that I make are much more focused. Or rather, the energy that I put into practicing is much more directed at a specific point. And for me personally, where I'm at in my musical stage, that's really good. I've spent maybe in the last few years a little too much time noodling, not enough time really focusing in on a specific point. And because now I'm focusing on specific points, the ways in which I'm practicing, the methods I'm making to get there have also gotten more specific. And therefore, I can get to those goals much more efficiently. I find it helpful personally to verbalize everything that I'm doing. I sound a little bit like I have a problem when I practice because I'm just talking. But honestly, it helps keep me really grounded. It helps keep me focused. And I immediately know when I'm spacing out because I'll stop talking. I'll stop having the ideas. And then I'll take a break and I'll come back and life is good again. So now I want to hear from you. What is your practice like? What do you start with? What do you do when you get stuck? How do you know if what you're doing is helping? Please let me know in the comments. Please let me know if you have any ideas for future content. For now, that's all. I'll say thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe, and happy practicing.